Hi, my name's Paul Grogan and welcome to the first in a series of videos where I'm going to be teaching you how to play Aeon Trespass Odyssey. In this video I'll be showing you how to get started with the game and the overall structure of how the game plays. Aeon Trespass Odyssey is a cooperative 1 to 4 player campaign game set in an alternative version of ancient Greece, where a cataclysmic event killed the Olympian gods and unleashed the primordials, giant monsters from some otherworldly place whose goal it is to end all mortal life once and for all. In the game, players take on the role of Argonauts, the only people who can fight off the darkness and make things right. On board a giant city ship known as the Argo, you will explore the map, go on adventures, develop new technologies, craft items, and much more. Over the course of the campaign, you will do battle with the primordials, but not as yourselves, because mortals are not powerful enough to penetrate the armour of these huge monsters. Instead, thanks to the technology available to you, each Argonaut is able to meld with a Titan, controlling their actions. These Titans battle the primordial, trying to kill it before it kills them. Battles in Aeon Trespass Odyssey use the inverted combat paradigm mechanism. Instead of combatants getting worn down with wounds and fatigue, they get stronger as the battle goes on. Titans build up more rage each time they attack, unlocking more abilities for them to use. And as primordials are wounded, they escalate, becoming more dangerous and deadly. Outside of the battles, the campaign is a choice-driven narrative set of interwoven stories where your decisions matter and may have a drastic impact on the campaign. The full campaign is divided into 5 cycles. The first 3 are included in the core box, and the other 2 are available separately. Each cycle offers dozens of hours of gameplay and its own distinct story arc and feel. Although I'll be making every effort to ensure that these videos are correct at the time of recording, publishers sometimes issue errata or clarifications to the rules of their games, so I would strongly recommend checking out the description of this video for any changes to the rules which may have been made after this video has been released. Also, be sure to check out the official list of errata and clarifications, which can be found on the publisher's website. A big thank you to Into the Unknown for commissioning me to create these videos, but I also rely on the support of my Patreon campaign to keep the channel going. So if you are in a position to be able to support me directly, you can do so at patreon.com/gamingrules. Aeon Trespass Odyssey is a complex game, but the Learn to Play booklet is the best place to start. I strongly recommend following through that at least once before jumping into the main campaign. Before you do though, if you've just got the game and you want to know what to do with everything in the box, you should follow the guide from the publisher also on their website. This explains where you will find the components needed specifically for the tutorial. And the game also comes with a number of secret decks and envelopes. Do not open these or look through them unless specifically told to do so. And that guide I just mentioned, telling you which components you need for the tutorial, well, that instructs you to take some cards that are packaged together with some of the secret decks. Just make sure that you only take the cards you need and put the secret decks aside for now. The Learn to Play booklet serves as both a tutorial and an introduction to the campaign. Even if you've been through it yourself and feel comfortable explaining the rules to others, I would still recommend playing through it again with your group before they start. And if you're thinking that you need to watch all of my videos before starting to play, well, you don't. You could press pause right now and just start playing with the Learn to Play booklet, which teaches you the basics of the game in a step-by-step fashion, guiding you through your first battle, exploration of the map, gaining progress, going on adventures, and so on. In this chapter, I'm going to explain how you get started with the Cycle 1 campaign. If you've followed through the tutorial from the Learn to Play booklet, you will already have done this, but because I'm going to be explaining some things as I go, I'd still recommend watching this part of the video and checking that you've got the game in the same state as I describe here. All of these setup instructions for Cycle 1 can be found in the Special Events chapter of the Cycle 1 storybook, which you will use if you restart the campaign and want to skip the tutorial. You will need to print out the double-sided Argo sheet and also 4 Argonaut sheets. These can be found in the back of the Cycle 1 book or on the official website. There are always 4 Argonauts, each of which is represented by a card with their picture on it and an Argonaut sheet, which is used to track all of the information about that character. If you're playing with fewer than 4 players, some players will control more than one character, but you always use 4 Argonauts in a campaign. You can choose any Argonaut to play. Each one has some flavour text on the back to give you some information about that character. On the bottom of your chosen card is listed one of the 6 skills. This is something the character is good at. On the Argonaut sheet, write a 1 in the box next to the corresponding skill. There are also some blank Argonaut cards if you want to choose your own name. If you do, just pick any of the 6 skills and gain a +1 bonus in it. Take the Mnemos cards, Siren, Survivor and Imprisonment. If you played the tutorial, these should already be assigned to 2 different Argonauts. If not, choose 2 Argonauts at random to get these cards. Then write the name of the card in the Mnemos section on their Argonaut sheet. The Argonaut with Imprisonment increases their endurance and wisdom by 1, as indicated at the bottom of the card. They also write M002 into the boxes above the first blank triangle, as indicated on the level 1 part of the Mnemos card. And they also mark the first node. You don't normally start with any nodes marked when you gain one of these cards during the campaign, but this Argonaut experienced something during the tutorial which got them one. The Argonaut with the Siren Survivor card increases their courage and will by 1 and writes M003 in the boxes above the first blank triangle. They don't start with any of the other boxes marked. Mnemos cards represent the memories of the Argonauts' past lives, since they have recently awoken on board the Argo without any real memories of who they are or how they got there. I'll explain these cards in a lot more detail in another video, but essentially, at various points in the campaign you will be marking nodes which will unlock abilities and new stories. The Argo sheet tracks your main progress through the campaign. Mark your hull as 4 and your crew as 5. Also, mark your starting Argo fate as 0. The city ship is crucial to the campaign. You may lose battles and titans, but if you lose the Argo, the campaign ends in failure. If you didn't play the tutorial, mark your diplomacy levels with each of the 3 factions as 0. If you did play the tutorial, you will either have gained 1 diplomacy with the Minoans and lost 1 with the Hornsworn, or vice versa. Your diplomacy with each faction will rise and fall over the course of the campaign, which will affect the encounters that you have with those factions. Note that you have an AA limit of 2 and 8 out of 10 Titans, and list that you have 8 Dreamwalker Titans on board. On the evolution track, mark the 0 box of the Hecaton, because you fought it during the tutorial. Also, in the cargo hold, mark that you have 1 Muscle Cluster, 1 Calcified Knucklebone, and 4 Raw Ambrosia. Note that these may be different if you played through the tutorial battle yourself. You should also have 1 Sisyphus tier in your hidden hold. On the reverse side of the Argo sheet, days T0 to T6 on the timeline should be marked. These are the 7 days covered in the tutorial. The campaign starts off on day 00. Notice that there are 80 days on the timeline. You must succeed in your goal before time runs out. On the choice matrix, either A7 or A8 will have been marked if you played through the tutorial. If you did not, mark one of those at random. Take the following technology cards: Bridge Tholos, Titan Stower, Excursion Propylon, Last Academy, Grand Agora, Trireme Weapons, Trireme Ranged Weapons, and Trireme Armour. Note that these cards are double-sided with a different name on the other side, so be sure to check both sides when finding these cards. The technology cards you start with remind you of some of the rules of the game and what you can do. For example, your Titan limit of 10 is determined by your Titan Stower, and your AA limit of 2 is determined by your Excursion Propylon. And don't worry, I'll be covering what all of these do in the other videos. Next, you need to build your projects deck, which is a list of technology cards that you currently don't have, but ones that you could gain. To determine which card should be in your projects deck, flip over all of your current technology cards and find anything listed in the leads to sections of each card that you don't already have. This should be Arrow Barrage, Siren Armour, Titan Hunting, Rhetoric and Trading Solutions. You also start the campaign with the following gear cards: Siren Teeth, Kratos Copis, Boat Mace, Shipwrecker Shield, Siren Panoply Armour, and Sail Spolas. These cards form the Argo Armoury, which is a set of cards that you can equip your Titans with at the start of a battle. They are not assigned to a specific Argonaut. You will also need the 4 Fists cards, so keep them in the Armoury too. Take the Doom card with the title Shape of Things to Come and place it with the 1A side showing. Read the text on it to familiarise yourself with the card. Then place 2 Doom counters onto the card to represent that the Dark Forces have already started growing in power. Place the Inward Odyssey card, the Truth of the Labyrinth, showing side 1A, and again read the text at the top. Place 1 progress on this card. Each time you gain 2 progress markers on here, you remove them and read the next part of the Inward Odyssey story. If you've played through the tutorial, you will already have an exploration deck. If you haven't played through the tutorial, just take the deck of exploration cards for Cycle 1. You'll be told which ones you need when you read Story Card 1 just after the campaign begins. And I mentioned earlier that you should definitely check out the official FAQ and errata for the game, One important thing is that Exploration Card 32, Dog Days, should be included in your initial exploration cards. Take the map cards for Cycle 1, which are the ones with the brown backs, and find card 27, flipping it over. Place the Argo miniature on the card. Your campaign starts in the port of Knossos. A campaign of Aeon Trespass Odyssey is played over a series of rounds, with each round representing 1 day of time. How many days you play in each game session can vary. In one session, you might have 5 days at sea, exploring, crafting new gear, going on an adventure, and then having a battle. But battles can be triggered from various events, and you might find yourself with 2 or even 3 battles on the same day, split across multiple game sessions. Each campaign round is divided into 9 steps as shown on the summary table at the back of the rulebook. And there are also 3 distinct phases of the game: the voyage phase, the adventure phase, and the battle phase. But it isn't as simple as certain steps being part of certain phases. When you're involved in a battle, you are in the battle phase, and when you're on an adventure, reading sections from the storybook, then that's the adventure phase. And at every other time, you're in the voyage phase. Phases are there to group together a set of rules. For example, you might have a card with an ability that can be used in the voyage phase, so you can use that no matter which step of the round that you're in, as long as you aren't in a battle or the adventure phase. I'll go through each of the steps of a campaign round in more detail in the second video in this series. The Argo is a gigantic city ship which you use to sail around Hellas. Your position on the map is tracked by the miniature, and information about the Argo is tracked on the Argo sheet, which is different for each cycle of the campaign. The 4 basic Argo stats are Hull, Crew, Argo Fate, and Argo Knowledge. Hull represents the integrity of the Argo. If the hull ever reaches 0, the campaign is lost, and you should read the indicated section in the main part of your current storybook. Crew represents the strength of the able-bodied members of the ship's crew. If the crew ever reaches 0, you lose the campaign and must read the indicated section of your current storybook. Argo Fate represents the collective destiny of the Argo and its crew. Unlike Hull and Crew, having 0 Argo Fate is good, but as you bend the fates in your favour, this value will rise. If the Argo Fate ever goes above 9, you lose the campaign and read the indicated section in your current storybook. Having a high Argo Fate can be bad. A number of events in the game trigger or are made worse if your Argo Fate is a certain level or higher, so be careful. Argo Fate is reduced by a certain amount when resolving the Tides of Fate, which happens after most battles. Argo Knowledge represents the collective information gained about the Argo itself and the current state of the world. Unlike the other stats, this will only ever go up, and increasing Argo Knowledge is a good thing. Whenever you gain Argo Knowledge, you get to read the next chapter of your Inward Odyssey adventure. There are 20 of these for each cycle, done in order. Once you've completed the 10 on side A, flip the card over to side B. The Inward Odyssey adventures tell the story about the Argo itself and its crew. Each cycle has its own Inward Odyssey card, and once a cycle is completed, any remaining Inward Odyssey adventures are skipped, so try to do as many as you can. The main storyline in Aeon Trespass Odyssey is represented by a series of story cards. You don't have one of these at the very start of the campaign, but you will be instructed shortly after you begin to take the Absent Rule story card and place it showing side 1A. And you also have the Inward Odyssey card as mentioned earlier, which starts the campaign with a progress counter already on it. To complete a cycle successfully, you must progress through the story cards one at a time, and you do this by collecting progress tokens, which are mainly gained through exploration and adventures. As mentioned earlier, whenever you gain a progress token, you can place it on your current story card or onto your Inward Odyssey card. And as you can see here, whenever you accumulate 2 progress tokens on the Inward Odyssey card, you remove them and increase your Argo Knowledge by 1. This unlocks the next adventure from your Inward Odyssey card, which you resolve during the story step. I'll explain more about adventures in the second video. The rewards from your Inward Odyssey card can be valuable, and if you're a completionist like me, you will want to unlock all 20 adventures before the end of the cycle. However, be careful, you only win by completing the main story cards, not the Inward Odyssey. The main story card indicates how many progress tokens you need to place on it before progressing the story. For the Absent Rule, once you have 6 progress tokens on it, you flip it to the other side. Some story cards don't require any progress. For example, a story card might just tell you to travel to a certain location. In this case, any progress you gain can go on your Inward Odyssey card. Doom is the opposite of progress and represents the encroachment of evil forces. Whenever you gain a Doom token, place it on your current Doom card. And once you have reached the number of Doom tokens shown on the card, follow the instructions on it. Each cycle has a certain number of Doom cards, and if you reach the Doom threshold on the B side of the last Doom card, the campaign ends in failure. The choice matrix tracks some important choices that you've made during the campaign. At various points, the outcome of a particular event may be influenced if a certain box is marked or not. If you are ever instructed to mark a box that is already marked, ignore it, as a box can only be marked once. And it's rare, but it could happen, that you are instructed to erase a box. The choice matrix persists through all cycles of the game, so a decision that you made in cycle 1 may be relevant later on. And since each cycle has its own Argo sheet, whenever you complete a cycle, make sure that you transfer the choice matrix carefully from one Argo sheet to the next. As mentioned earlier, there are always exactly 4 Argonauts in the campaign, newly awakened with little or no memories of their former lives. Each Argonaut has a portrait card, an Argonaut sheet and a Triskelion, as well as any Mnemos cards that they have acquired. And note that there are no miniatures for the Argonauts. In battle, the Argonauts control Titans who will fight against the Primordials. The Argonaut sheet tracks the progress of an individual character. Each Argonaut has 6 skills which are used during various tests throughout the campaign. The higher the value, the better the chance of success. Any Mnemos cards you acquire are listed here. I'll talk about these more in the next chapter. The Triskelion is an important part of the game, representing the union of rage, fate and danger that make the junction between Argonaut and Titan possible. Unlike the other stats, these values are always in flux. They are mainly used in battles, but other events in the campaign can cause these values to increase or decrease outside of combat. Whenever you gain or lose rage, fate or danger, rotate the dials to reflect the new values. Because of the nature of the inverted combat paradigm, raising these values can be beneficial to you. However, if any of them would be raised above 9, something bad usually happens. I'll cover if this happens during a battle in a later video, but if any of the values go above 9 outside of a battle, the Argonaut dies. Not a Titan, the actual Argonaut themselves, which is bad news. As such, you cannot voluntarily gain rage, fate or danger if it would put you above 9. Another important thing about the Triskelion is that all dials are only reset to 0 after a battle. And what this means is that you will go into a battle with the values that you have accumulated from the various choices you've made up to that point. This could be both a good thing, as higher rage values will unlock more abilities in combat, but higher danger values bring you closer to death. Outside of battles, whether you are exploring ancient ruins or negotiating with foreign cities, one Argonaut leads the group. The current party leader is indicated by this token, placed in front of them. If you ever get to a point where you're faced with a choice or something refers to the party leader and you haven't yet chosen one, do so now. That Argonaut stays the leader until the end of the current adventure. If during any decision making the players cannot agree on what to do, it's the party leader who breaks all ties. They are also the most likely to be affected by events that happen during adventures. During the campaign, your Argonaut will acquire Mnemos Cards. These cards represent memories of the Argonaut's past, and as you go on adventures, your Argonaut will start to regain some of their memories. When you gain one of these cards, write them on the Argonaut sheet here. Then look to the bottom right of the level 1 section and write that code above the first breakthrough box here. Each card also gives you a +1 to 2 different skills. A Knight to Remember, for example, gives Telebacchus a +1 to his Courage and Fury. Your Argonaut now has access to the level 1 ability on the card. This one is used during battles. In my second video, where I talk about adventures, I will explain how you gain Mnemos nodes, but when you do, you mark the next box on the track. After the first 3 boxes are marked, you resolve a Mnemos breakthrough adventure from the storybook, which again I will cover in more detail in my second video. Your Argonaut then has access to the level 2 ability on the card in addition to the level 1 ability. And you will have written a new number above the second breakthrough box. After the next 4 boxes are marked, you resolve the second Mnemos breakthrough and then have access to all 3 abilities on the card. Once you resolve the last breakthrough of a Mnemos card, the card is classed as resolved, but you keep it so you still have access to all of the abilities on it. Without trying to spoil too much, when you resolve the last Mnemos breakthrough adventure of a particular card, you will be given an important choice. One of those choices will instruct you to mark a particular box on the choice matrix. And if you do this, you must also write down the same number in the Catharsis section on your Argonaut sheet. This may become relevant later in the campaign. You can only ever have 2 Mnemos cards. If you are ever instructed to gain another one when you already have 2, the new card goes to another random Argonaut. If all Argonauts have 2 Mnemos cards, then you place the card in your Mnemos Vault instead. The Mnemos Vault is a set of cards that must be kept separately from those still in the box. It consists of cards that you have gained during the campaign which aren't currently assigned to a specific Argonaut. During the campaign, an Argonaut may gain a fated Mnemos card, representing mental traumas that they have suffered. When instructed to gain one of these, take all of the fated Mnemos cards from the box which correspond to your current cycle, as indicated by the number in the top right. Choose one of them at random and place it black side up in front of you, and write its name on your Argonaut sheet. Each fated Mnemos card gives you a penalty to a skill as shown on the bottom of the card. Apply that to your Argonaut sheet now. This could cause one of your skills to go negative. The card also lists a special negative effect that always applies to you. Like regular Mnemos cards, you can have a maximum of 2 fated Mnemos cards at any time. And also, like regular Mnemos cards, during adventures you can gain nodes for these which you will record by marking boxes on your Argonaut sheet. When you have marked the first 3 nodes, you don't read anything in the storybook, you just resolve that card. First, remove the stat penalty and then flip the card over. This represents your Argonaut overcoming their mental hurdles, and as a result they gain a benefit. Transfer the ability on the blue side of the card to the abilities section of your Argonaut sheet. Then return the card back to the box. It could come out again later on. So it could happen that your Argonaut manages to overcome a specific fated Mnemos only to get it again. In this case, you gain the bonus for previously overcoming it and the penalty for having it again. And if you overcome it a second time, you get the bonus again. Some story events may cause an Argonaut to leave the Argo. When this happens, the player immediately creates a new one. Any fully resolved Mnemos cards, ones in which you have resolved the final Mnemos breakthrough adventure, are returned to the box with the Mnemos cards that you haven't seen yet. Any unresolved Mnemos cards are added to the Mnemos Vault, which is kept separately. If the Argonaut had any fated Mnemos cards, return them to the box. Then take a new Argonaut sheet, choose another Argonaut portrait card or take one of the blank ones, and remember to add one to the corresponding skill level on this sheet. Unlike when the campaign started, each new Argonaut comes with a Mnemos card, drawn at random from the vault, not from those in the box. This could be the one that you have just added to the vault. Write the details onto your Argonaut sheet as normal. And it's rare, though possible, that your Argonaut will die. This happens when either explicitly stated or if any of your Triskelion dials goes above 9 outside of a battle. If this happens, look in the special events section of your current storybook and read the Rude Awakening event. I won't spoil it here, but the process is similar to retirement in that any unresolved Mnemos cards go to the vault and you can generate a new Argonaut in the same way as mentioned earlier. Whatever you do, always keep the Argonaut sheets for deceased or retired Argonauts, for reasons that I can't talk about here. At various times in the game, you will be instructed to make a test. This often applies during adventures, but it can happen at other times in the game too, so I'm going to cover the rules now. To perform a test, simply roll a d10. If you roll equal to or higher than the difficulty of the test, then it's a success. Otherwise, it's a fail. A roll of a 10, represented by this symbol, is always a success, and a 1 is always a failure. There are 2 main types of tests: Argonaut tests, which are performed by an individual character, and Argo tests, which are made by the group as a whole. Argonaut tests are usually associated with a specific skill. For example, this text instructs each Argonaut to test Fury or Endurance with a difficulty of 8+. Telebacchus has a +2 to his Endurance skill and only a +1 to his Fury, so he chooses to test Endurance, rolling a 7, which with the +2 is a success. Sometimes you'll be given the option to add a bonus to your die roll. Unless otherwise stated, all of these effects must be declared before you roll. For example, this test instructs one Argonaut to test Wisdom with a difficulty of 7+. However, it allows each Argonaut to gain 2 Fate to add 1 to the roll. So each Argonaut must decide if they want to gain the 2 Fate before the die is rolled. And if everyone does, that's +4 to the roll. But what if you still fail? Well, whenever you are performing a test, you may gain 1 Fate to re-roll the die. You can only re-roll once, and if you fail again, too bad. And whilst I'm talking about re-rolls, during battles you'll be rolling multiple dice at once, and you can gain fate to re-roll any number of these dice. But you must decide how many dice you are going to re-roll, gaining 1 fate for each, before then re-rolling them. And each die can only be re-rolled once. Some tests require only a specific Argonaut to make the test, during which that Argonaut will succeed or fail, but often the other Argonauts can do something to increase the chances, as I mentioned earlier. Some tests also include the option for every Argonaut to gain or spend something in order to gain a benefit. Here, if all Argonauts gain 2 fate, you gain 1 progress. Other tests are group tests, where in addition to individuals' potential success or failure, you also need to count the total successes of the group and look up the result in the following text. When resolving a group test, all of the tests are supposed to be happening at the same time. This means that any decisions that need to be made, such as gaining fate or danger to get bonuses to your roll, must be made by each Argonaut before any of the tests are resolved. Then, once those decisions are made, each Argonaut makes their initial rolls. Then, each Argonaut chooses how much fate to gain to buy re-rolls, and once everyone has chosen, the re-rolls are actually performed. In other words, you cannot see how well another Argonaut did before choosing whether to gain fate yourself. The other type of test in the game are Argo tests, commonly found on technology cards. Argo tests are resolved in a similar way to other tests, and fate can be gained to re-roll, but in this case it isn't an Argonaut whose fate increases, it is the fate of the Argo itself. And remember, be careful about letting that get too high. One quick rule I wanted to mention here, which might catch you out in the game, is that sometimes you will be instructed to simply make a roll and look up the result. These are not tests unless the writing specifically includes the word test, so you cannot gain fate to re-roll them. The technology ability that we just looked at also contains the word save. These type of abilities allow you to perform what is known as a save test, which are used at the instant you're about to gain or lose something to avoid that gain or loss. Here, for example, whenever you are about to gain strangers, represented by this icon, you can test diplomacy with a difficulty of 7+ to reduce the number of strangers gained by 1. And you can gain Argo fate to re-roll a save test as normal. Also, some gains or losses in the game are listed as unavoidable. For these, you cannot use save abilities to ignore them. Aeon Trespass Odyssey is a game played over multiple sessions, which means that you need to save your progress at the end of each game session. A good time to do this is at the end of each campaign day. First, on the Argo sheet, note the number and letter of your current story card, along with any progress tokens that you've collected. Similarly, note the number and letter of your current Doom card and note the number of Doom tokens on it. Write down the number of the map tile that the Argo is currently on here. If you have a progress token on the Inward Odyssey card, make a mark next to the Argo knowledge box. To the right of the choice matrix, note down any other relevant map tiles, such as ones with tokens on them. Also note the position of the adversary, if it is on the map. For each Argonaut, record their current Triskelion values on their own sheet. Store your Technology deck, your Projects deck, Mnemos Vault, Argo Armory, Exploration deck, Clue cards, and other cards I won't mention here because of spoilers. How you store these cards is up to you. You may have a nice insert for the game, or just Ziploc bags. Either way, you need to keep them separate from the other cards of the same type still in the box. And for the Exploration deck, some of the cards might have been temporarily removed from your deck, such as this one. Make sure you make a note of that on the Argo sheet. Collect all of the map tiles that you have currently explored and keep them separate from the rest. Note that when you resume your game, you don't need to recreate the whole map, as it can get quite large. Finally, make sure that you record exactly which step of the round sequence that you are resolving, so that you can pick up exactly where you left off. At the back of the rulebook is a section on the Mnestis Theatre. And even though this is in the rulebook, you don't need to read it until you have unlocked it during your campaign. It is essentially a different way to play the game, allowing you to test your skills at battling primordials outside of a normal campaign. When you do unlock it, refer to the rulebook for the full rules on how it all works. And that is the end of this video. In part 2, I'll be covering the voyage phase and the adventure phase in more detail. I hope you found this video useful. As always, please give the video a like, leave me a comment and subscribe to the channel. And as mentioned earlier, I do rely on the financial support of my Patreon to keep the channel going. So if you want to support me directly, please visit patreon.com/gaming rules for exclusive access to the Gaming Rules community and some additional bonus content. Until next time, take care and thanks for watching.